80 earthquakes. That is the tally from the latest swarm rattling the ground roughly 70 to 90 miles north of San Francisco. And if you saw that number pop up on a notification this week, I understand exactly why your first instinct might be alarm. But before y'all jump to conclusions about what this actually means for the Bay Area, I want to walk through exactly where these quakes are coming from, why this specific stretch of Northern California produces swarms like this one on a genuinely regular basis, and what the real established seismic hazard for this region actually looks like. Let's start with the location, because it is the single most important piece of context for understanding this entire story. The area producing the swarm sits at the Geysers, a geothermal field spanning roughly 45 square miles across the border of Sonoma Lake and Mendocino counties, generally located somewhere between 70 and 90 miles north of San Francisco, depending on exactly where within the field a given quake originates. The Geysers is not just any patch of Northern California ground. It is recognized as the largest geothermal field on the entire planet, home to nearly 24 power plants that draw naturally occurring underground steam and convert it directly into electricity, currently generating around 725 megawatts of continuous power, enough to supply roughly 725,000 homes. Here is the piece of this story that I think genuinely surprises people the first time they hear it. A huge share of the earthquakes happening at the Geysers are not purely natural tectonic events in the way most people picture a California earthquake. According to the United States Geological Survey, the very process of harnessing this geothermal steam actively induces frequent minor earthquakes in the surrounding rock. There are two specific mechanisms at play here. First, as steam gets continuously withdrawn from underground reservoirs to power the plants, the surrounding rock contracts, and that contraction itself generates small earthquakes. Second, water that has already been used gets pumped back down into these same steam reservoirs to help sustain the field's long-term productivity, and the sharp thermal contrast between that cooler, reclaimed water and the much hotter surrounding rock creates additional stress that can also trigger small quakes. This combination of steam withdrawal and water reinjection is exactly why the Geysers produces so many more small earthquakes year after year than most other stretches of California ground of a comparable size. I want to give you all a sense of scale for just how routine this kind of activity actually is at this specific location, because an 80-quake swarm, while a genuinely large number on paper, fits squarely within a well-documented pattern for this exact region. Just this past August, a swarm of roughly 100 earthquakes struck this same general area about 90 miles north of San Francisco, with the strongest quake in that sequence reaching magnitude 4.0. Go back further, and you will find similar swarms recorded repeatedly at the Geysers, including a magnitude 4.2 earthquake that struck directly at the field, part of a cluster of at least 5 quakes hitting within minutes of each other, an event strong enough to be felt as far away as San Francisco itself, some 70 miles to the south. According to the USGS, the largest earthquake ever recorded at the Geysers came in at approximately magnitude 4.5, and while a magnitude 5 event is considered technically possible, seismologists consider anything meaningfully larger than that to be unlikely given the specific mechanics driving this particular kind of induced seismicity. So does an 80-quake swarm like this one mean a bigger, more dangerous earthquake is coming? I want to answer that as directly and honestly as I can, because I think this is exactly the question driving most of the concern behind a headline like this one. The scientific answer, according to seismologists who study this exact region, is no, not in the way most people might assume. Earthquake swarms at the Geysers are considered a normal, expected, and genuinely routine feature of this specific geothermal field's operation, driven by the same steam withdrawal and reinjection processes that have been running continuously for decades. These swarms are fundamentally different from a sequence of foreshocks, building toward a major tectonic rupture on a large regional fault. The USGS has been consistent and clear on this point across multiple past swarms at this exact location. This pattern of activity does not indicate that a significantly larger earthquake is building up beneath the surface. That said, I do not want you all to walk away from this thinking Northern California carries no real seismic hazard at all, because that would be its own kind of misleading takeaway. The genuine serious earthquake risk for this region comes not from the Geysers itself, but from the major regional faults running nearby, specifically the San Andreas Fault and the Healdsburg-Rogers Creek Fault, both of which are capable of producing significantly larger, more damaging earthquakes than anything the Geysers has ever generated or is expected to generate. The Geysers' swarm activity and the region's broader major fault hazard are, in a very real sense, two separate stories happening in roughly the same geographic neighborhood. And conflating the two is exactly the kind of mistake that turns a routine, well-understood geothermal phenomenon into an unnecessarily alarming headline. Let me also touch on the broader Bay Area seismic picture, because I think context here is genuinely useful. San Francisco itself sits within a region the USGS considers very high on the national scale for seismic activity, and the area has recorded dozens of magnitude 1, 0 or greater earthquakes within just the past 30 days across its broader 75-kilometer radius, a mix of activity from the geysers, the San Ramon Valley swarms I've covered before on this channel, and routine background seismicity along the region's dense network of faults. According to the USGS's own long-term modeling, there's roughly a 72% probability of a magnitude 6, 7 or greater earthquake striking within 100 kilometers of San Francisco sometime within the next 30 years, and a 51% probability of a magnitude 7, 0 or greater event in that same window. Those numbers reflect the genuine, long-established hazard tied to the region's major fault systems, entirely independent of whatever swarm activity happens to be making headlines at the geysers on any given week. So let me bring this together and give you all the honest, complete picture. An 80-quake swarm at the geysers is a real, measurable event, and it makes sense that a number like that would catch people's attention. But based on decades of USGS monitoring at this exact location, this kind of swarm is routine, expected, and directly tied to the mechanics of geothermal energy production, rather than to any building tectonic threat. If you live anywhere across the North Bay, including Sonoma, Lake, or Mendocino counties, you may feel occasional shaking from this kind of activity, and that is a normal part of living near an active geothermal field. The more serious, ongoing preparedness priority for the broader Bay Area remains the same as it has always been, staying ready for the region's major fault systems, not this specific, well-understood pattern of induced seismicity happening up at the geysers. If you found this breakdown helpful, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because I want to keep bringing you all the real science behind headlines like this one, especially when a genuinely well-understood phenomenon gets an alarming sounding number attached to it. Share this video with anybody you know across the Bay Area who saw this swarm on the news and wanted the real explanation behind it. I will keep watching the data for y'all, and I will see y'all in the next one. Stay informed, stay prepared, and I love y'all.